We've all done it. We've gone to a nursery or a big box garden center and taken a look at the potting mixes and the potting soils because we needed a bag or two to fill up our pots and our containers to put plants in. And while we were standing there looking at the vast variety of choices, we wondered, is the expensive stuff really that much better than the cheap stuff? Well, I decided to try to find out and run some experiments of my own. So join me as I try to help answer the question, is expensive potting mix really worth it? Hi, I'm Gardener Scott, and this is where I conducted my tests in these Greenstock vertical planters. I tried to treat it as close to a truly scientific experiment as much as possible. I wanted to keep as many of the variables the same. So by using a Greenstock, I was able to use the exact same size of pot and get pretty much the exact same water and sun levels depending on which direction I was turning my Greenstock. The biggest variable was the soil, and in each of these tiers I used a different potting mix. One of the potting mixes that I highlighted in an earlier video, and I'll link to that video that shows just exactly what's in these mixes at the end. For now, let's go ahead and talk about some of the initial results and what I think is the final result of this experiment. So I put all of these plants in as transplants about 3 weeks ago, and they're all looking pretty good on the 4 different levels with the 4 different types of soil. Let's go ahead and look to see which soil is doing better between the 4. The broccoli is developing pretty well on all of the different levels. I would say, however, at the top level with the Stay Green is noticeably smaller than the others. For this batch, I think it's the Miracle-Gro that is showing the most even growth. The lettuce has similar results. The Miracle-Gro is doing very well. The Fox Farm and the Paeonia are also good. And the Stay Green tends to be the smallest. The parsley and the Thai basil is doing pretty well in all of the different levels. For this one, I think it's these Fox Farm plants that are doing the best. And again, I have to say the Stay Green has the least amount of growth. For the other 2 types of basil, it looks like the dark basil is better in the Miracle-Gro level. The Genovese basil is better in the Fox Farm level. And for the first time, Stay Green plants actually don't look too bad. It's been almost 6 weeks since I shot that earlier footage to show how the plants were doing initially. I've done nothing to these plants other than water them over the entire course of this experiment. I've allowed them to flower, I've allowed them to age, and now at about the 9-week point, let's take a look to see how these plants are doing. As I look at the parsley and the basil, I'm a bit surprised by the results. I haven't harvested any of these plants, though I hope to do that today after I'm done with this video. What I find is that the Miracle-Gro parsley and the Miracle-Gro purple basil are doing the best, followed very closely by the Stay Green basil and parsley. The big reason why I'm surprised by this is based on the initial results and my initial expectations that the more expensive potting mixes would do better. I'm surprised that it's the cheapest ones that are actually doing the best at this point when these plants are reaching the end of their life cycle. With the hot temperatures on this deck, it's no surprise that the cool season broccoli and lettuce have started to bolt. All of the broccoli turned out pretty good, and it's hard to determine a winner. But in this case, I would say the most expensive brand, the Paonia, produced the tallest plant. And the Fox Farm, the next most expensive, produced the smallest plant. The lettuce shows similar results. The Fox Farm has the smallest plants, and while the others look pretty good, the tallest of them all is the cheapest Stay Green potting mix. Looking at this Genovese basil, this time I have to give the victory to the Fox Farm. It's tallest and looks healthiest of all the other plants, but it's followed closely by the Miracle-Gro. So, some of the best performing mix at the 3-week point was not the best performing mix at the 9-week point. And some of the worst performance at the 3-week point actually turned around and became much better at the 9-week point. It's hard to determine exactly why. All of these mixes did have the addition of different types of fertilizers. Some of them were synthetic fertilizers, some of them were natural fertilizers. That might play a role in how a plant performs initially and then over the long-term growth of its life cycle. And for one more point of consideration, take a look at this GreenStalk vertical planter. In this one, I'm using my own potting soil blend in all of the levels. And while this wasn't a direct part of this experiment, I did grow some of the same plants, like this broccoli. I think it's interesting to note that with the store-bought mixes, none of the broccoli have yet to form any crowns. But on my own personal mix, I've already got crowns developing. I can actually start harvesting this broccoli if I want to. All of the plants that I'm growing using my personal mix are doing pretty well. The green beans and the shishito peppers are ready to harvest earlier than any of the plants or seeds that I have growing in my raised beds. So what's my takeaway from this experiment using 4 different types of store-bought mixes and also comparing it to my own personal mix? I think I can say it really doesn't make that big of a difference. The cheapest of these mixes was 19 cents for a quart of potting mix. The most expensive was 4 times that at 78 cents per quart. My personal mix, I can do for about 12 cents per quart. Looking at just the cost factor, I think you would agree that the most expensive mix did not produce results that were 4 times better than the cheapest mix, and not 5 times better than the mix that I can make. Looking at how the plants grew, there were some winners for the individual plants, but overall, it was pretty consistent. They all did okay. So if you're looking purely at cost, consider making your own mix or buying the cheapest of the mixes. If you are more concerned about the company that you're buying from, the philosophy of how they make their mixes, well, that can influence what you choose to buy, and the results aren't going to be that big of a difference. Overall, I'm going to continue to make my own mix because I like the results that I get and it saves me money. Hopefully this has helped you decide which direction you're going to lean. And to see how I make my mixes and compare how these mixes are put together, look at one of these videos next. I'm Gardener Scott. Enjoy gardening.